again to discuss things.
Boys and ghouls, it's your old pal Scythe Part 2 here. Joining me today is a gore for fun, and we're starting off Holy Gentlemen Horror Month.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. And I'm very excited to get into all of this because, as you can tell, so this is going to be, I think this isn't my first time doing this, but this is my first kind of when I just became the default doing this.
Yeah, this is how I ruin my friendships, is I just make them record video after video with me, and they're just like, okay, I'm kind of just Ian'd out, and I don't want to be on recording anymore, so I'm just going to leave.
This is just where I'm waiting to get him Alfie'd out, because I have way too much tolerance for this shit.
Who's gonna break first? Leave your comments down below. So anyway, Alfie, initially, like, I'd fucked up and I'd forgotten to mention that, next video has to be a horror character. And I was like, Alfie, so you're probably gonna have to change your character. And he's like, no. He was very, very adamant that we keep this character. So Alfie, who are we talking about today?
Today we'll be talking about the guy... The Canadian.
Wow, that's really scary.
I mean, there's nothing worse than passive aggressiveness. So yeah,
Isn't there, Alfie? Isn't there? Sorry, you lined that one up for me so well.
Sent a shiver down my spine. But yeah, he's 5 foot nothing, got very bad body deodorant hair, and he's kind of lovable. He's kind of an ass. He's Wolverine. Everybody knows him. He's one of the biggest characters on the face of the planet, and I'm surprised he hasn't been touched on yet. And yes, he fits quite a lot of genres, including horror, because he has Freddy Krueger hands.
You know, when I worked at Goodwill, we'd get in video games, and the thing that'd be wrong with them half the time is the discs were all scratched to hell. I'm like, oh, come on, man, you could sell this. And he'd be like, one of my friends that worked there, he was like, hell no, man, it looked like Wolverine, Freddy Krueger, and Edward Scissorhands all played that game. So yeah. Wolverine, I don't know, I guess I get what you're going for with he fits the horror thing. It's not a perfect fit, but I get it. You know, it's like, okay, he's got like the over-the-top gore thing. If you wanted to, you could probably write a horror story. Like, if you're going to write a horror story about any of the X-Men, Wolverine would probably be one of the better fits to do it with, I guess. Like, I can't readily think of another... No, actually, that's wrong. Beast. Beast would be a much better fit for a horror story with X-Men.
Well, I mean,
but still.
I guess we can get into this later on, but... we both know that you haven't read that much Marvel, well, here and there, but not as well versed in it as I've been, because I'm just a sadder nerd. But there are, like, I can name about, like, 2 easily off the top of my head, and there's probably more because I'm not much of an X-Men guy, where Wolverine is in horror comics, and has been written into quite good horror stories that are probably some of my favorite Wolverine stories, especially, I think, maybe one of the most famous ones, which is Weapon X is a horror story.
Okay. I guess that's a good point. It's one of those things where, like, you just... comics are such this weird genre where there's so much bleeding into stuff. You know, Batman can be a super scientist solving diseases that are spreading throughout Gotham one week, and then the next week he's fighting monsters, and then sometimes you cross those streams with stuff like the Batman versus Dracula, where he defeats Dracula with science. You know, he cured vampirism in that movie. So there is so much like bleeding genre stuff that I guess it makes sense for like Wolverine to kind of cross over into that stuff from time to time. And I guess he does have, maybe more so than most, I guess Weapon X, like the origin for Wolverine, does kind of fit that horror vibe a little bit more than most superhero origins.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that's something that's strung to his character, because specifically, I think to be in the rest of the theme, I will kind of focus in on the horror aspects of the character. But there are quite... Wolverine for the longest time was such like a mystery, which was very rare for comic book characters. Like normally, the moment they're introduced, they had their entire backstory as a Wikipedia article. Mm-hmm. Wolverine, legitimately, I gotta give Marvel credit that they held off on his origin for so long. I think it wasn't until like 2005 or something when they finally like gave the full origin book. It was like early 2000s-ish, but I was really impressed that they waited that long and only gave us snippets, and the fact that he didn't remember himself helped with that. But when you do get the Weapon X comic, which was not his origin, but showed you where he got the bone claws to the metal claws, and basically why he lost his memories, that book is legitimately... I would love to see you could do a really cool fan film of that, which is just all horror, because it's from the perspective of the scientists. Wolverine isn't the main character in that, and it's just very much this mad scientist, we are creating this, things are going well, we've got the test subject, we're in control, to the end when he's just hunting them down one by one, and it's just still the guy's journals, and he's like, what have we done, what have we created? And it's like legitimately... would be, if you were going to do a Wolverine film like after Hugh Jackman, you probably should just start with this and go as far away tonally from his version of the character as you can, and just make Wolverine scary.
I guess I could see that. You know, like, that's the thing is Hugh Jackman's Wolverine running through labs just killing people became kind of almost memeable at a certain point. But especially by the time you get to like fucking Apocalypse, where it's just obligatory Hugh Jackman cameo in these X-Men movies. It's crazy to think about. That dude ate like 17 chickens to be on film for a whole 2 minutes. 17 chickens a day to be on film for a whole 2 minutes. But yeah, I guess I could see that. That would probably be a really cool approach to Wolverine, is just really lean into the kind of scary, kind of freaky, because Hugh Jackman's portrayal is such just... He was always great. He always did a really good job with the character. But his portrayal is such like or his casting rather, is such a relic in a number of ways. Like, here's this guy that really physically does not fit the part when he was first cast, and just going forward. Like, Wolverine is not attractive. Wolverine's supposed to be kind of like this, really, short, stumpy guy that's got kind of like a face only a mother could love or something. Very like grizzled kind of looking dude. Sneering, I always imagine like the forehead wrinkles always there with Wolverine. And yet they cast like this, nice, tall, handsome Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I don't know if you'd necessarily have that happen today. I think that comic book movies have evolved to the point where you wouldn't necessarily get that kind of casting anymore. And so maybe as the MCU moves forward, they'll kind of like lean into that a little bit.
I mean, I think you'd have to just to do something different. You have to get someone who's more fitting to that appearance, and you'd have to put them in the costume. Just because those are the two things that Hugh Jackman didn't get to touch upon. And I'd also just add the horror aspect, because I think that's some underutilized piece of the character's lore that you could get into. But just in villain general, even when you take him outside of that one story where he's around, Wolverine always does kind of when he's with the X-Men, he's always kind of the surly, the cynicist. He's like even Batman in the Justice League is normally the guy who like says the blunt answer, but he's normally right. Wolverine's the guy who says the blunt answer, but it's nearly always wrong. But he's just goes so forward about it, and so doesn't give a shit about anyone because he's too old and he's too drunk to care. But yet sometimes there's a bit of truth into that because he probably cares the most out of everyone. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic to take with this character, because in the same way as Batman, it lends him to be fitting in nearly every kind of tone imaginable. There was a reason why in like the Marvel Now era, Wolverine was like on every single Marvel team, and it worked because although it was just because he's a popular, he played off everyone because he's just such a... Wolverine's always going to have like a comeback to everyone. He's got a dynamic with nearly every character you can think of. So, he goes for a drink with a bar with Spider-Man. That's a really good comic because it's just those two playing off each other, and it's hilarious. He goes, sits in a bar with Thor. That's another really good comic because they just got so different personalities. He vibes with that way a lot that I feel like the other X-Men characters don't have that versatility, which is probably why he did kind of become such a massive hit all on his own. But even away from that, I think something that's interesting that you kind of don't get a lot in the mainstream superheroes. You get this with like Punisher, you get this with like Spawn, but Wolverine probably is the biggest hero around that not just kills, but violently kills.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. One of the books I have been reading recently that does have Wolverine in it is Savage Avengers, and he fits that team so well. Shit just gets so crazy in that book, and he's got this little bromance brewing with Conan the Barbarian, which is really fun to read. Conan's very jealous of his knife hands. He wants them. And like there's a scene where Wolverine's kind of like passed out from blood loss, and Conan just picks up his unconscious body and gets the knives to come out and starts flailing him around as a weapon. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So no, I definitely agree. The savagery, the just really intense bloodiness of Wolverine has been something that has definitely been around, and I think it's come through a lot on film. It's one of those things where like he's a very popular character, but he can't ever really like get into it as deep as he needs to in cartoons. Someone pointed out this to me at one point, and I was never ever able to unsee it. So besides like slashing through the title screen and the commercial breaks in the cartoons, Wolverine never attacks anyone with his claws. Like anytime it's like an actual fight, he just like trips people a lot. And he never like actually stabs anyone.
The one time they finally did that, which made me very happy because they went all the way with it, was it was like a direct-to-video, direct-to-DVD probably at that point, a movie called Hulk versus Wolverine. Mm-hmm. And Wolverine, because it was a video direct-to-DVD thing, they'd have to worry about the censorship. So cartoon Wolverine got to cut motherfuckers up. Yep. And so you got to see him like dismember people and stuff. And it is kind of surreal. Then again, another version. The Wolverine anime exists. He slices people up in that as well. And it's almost weirder to see in those two mediums than it is to see in comics or live action. Because you are so used to stay away, Slim, I'll handle this. Retracts claws.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Snicked. There you go. Yeah. I don't know, it's such a funny thing because that brutality just can't translate into, one of the main things that superheroes are known for. Did they put Wolverine in any of the Mortal Kombat games?
No.
Man, that seems like a real missed opportunity, doesn't it?
I think so as well.
He'd be real happy over in that universe. Okay, so like, where do you think the brutality of the character comes from? Like, what is your take on where that brutality is, or why that brutality is there?
I think a lot of it just has to come from Wolverine's like really long backstory, and it's not even long through necessarily just overcomplicated, because he's a very simple character when it comes down to it. He likes to enjoy life, he likes to get drink, he likes to have sex, and he likes to kill people, but he also likes to help people, and that's kind of the paradox of the character. The reason why he's got so many experiences and this violence is kind of escalated is because he's just lived so damn long that he's just become so desensitized to what he does. Like the first person he killed was his own dad, but he didn't know it was his own dad because it was like he was like a bastard. They go through that onward to just all the wars he's been in, and all the bigotry he's had to receive as being a mutant, and then the Weapon X thing, and then losing his mind and becoming this and this and this. He's always just kind of seen himself as not even like a person, but as like the knife. He is the person that people send to go and kill things, and he's fine with that, which is very interesting when you get this as a... Again, he's so weird as a superhero, because he's like a villain thug, almost, in terms of... He's like a doomsday type character, but he's on the good side. Because even when he's with the X-Men and he's at his most comfortable, he's at his most happy, he is always the Professor X or Cyclops that takes him aside from the rest of them and is like, okay, we need this guy dead. Go do this. There's a really good comic called after like House of M and Scarlet Witch had like wiped away the mutant population for like a good bit, so they just got reduced to a very tiny percentage. Like it was like 2% of mutants left in the world. A newborn baby mutant got born and the X-Men was sent to take it, but Mystique, who was on the team, betrayed them and killed the baby and then ran away. And the rest of the X-Men were like, oh my god, we can't do this, we have to bring her into justice, we have to take her in. But then Cyclops just took Wolverine aside and was like, okay, here's money, take her out. And then the whole comic is just Wolverine going around the world hunting Mystique and then brutally killing her at the end. And it's fucked up, but it's just like, oh, okay. He's that guy in the mainstream superhero universe.
I find it weird that Cyclops had to pay him.
Well, he just had to give him money to give like a plane ticket and stuff.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, no, I think that does make him really interesting. You know, as you were talking about him there, I'd forgotten about the wars for some reason, and you know, you mentioned that, you mentioned the desensitization to trauma, and you know what I couldn't help but think of? Man, Tom King could do a really good Wolverine series.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Like, there's so much about that character that just really flies right up Tom King's alley. It's a little surprising that Marvel didn't give it to him.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was on like here's the characters available you can use. He just didn't go with it because he was like too high profile.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. To be fair, when he was working at Marvel, he wasn't as high profile as he is now. So maybe they didn't want to give one of the flagship characters to a relatively unknown writer. You know,
might be that. Might be truth to that.
Yeah, Vision was like a big deal and all, but like not when it started. So I don't know. But just thinking about that, like, you know, the idea of surviving trauma and just never being able to die, like, you know, so like there's one of the scenes in the X-Men movies that always sticks with me and I always thought was like really, really interesting was, you know, like, does it hurt every time they come out? He says, every time. And I was thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, that it would. You'd never be able to get used to that if the tissue always healed perfectly. And that's really, really fascinating. But then you see him, like, just fucking, like, take him out to cut a piece of, like, salami in some of the X-Men cartoons, and I'm like, well, I guess not. But, like, I don't know, you give some shit like that to Tom King, and he'd make that canon. It's like, yeah, it hurts every time. And it's one of the only things that reminds me that I'm human. Or that I'm not an animal, is I choose the pain. Or something like that. I could just see Tom King like having a field day with that.
I think the closest thing I've seen to that, which I really, really like, it's going to annoy me that I don't remember the the name of the writer who did this scene, but it's what I mentioned earlier when Spider-Man and Wolverine just like sit in a bar, and it's because Peter Parker kind of wants to pull an intervention on him, and it's very meta. So it feels like a Tom King story, but it wasn't written by Tom King, where he's just like, you're on all these teams all at once. You're on the X-Men, you're on the Avengers, you're on all these different things. You're doing this constantly. I see you get beat up every other week, and I know you got a healing factor, but that takes a mental tissue. You all right, buddy? Like, it's just like, you doing okay? And Wolverine has this really interesting thing, which I think really justifies why a guy like this is a mainstream superhero. Is he's like, the more good I do, the more people I save, the more planets I get to like do save with the Avengers and everything like this. It's making up for all the hurt I've done in my life, and it's still not enough. So I still need to keep doing more.
Wow, I do really like that, because I know like he has that canon of being in like all the wars from the 1800s to the present day. But, like, was he, Black Ops the whole time? Was he, like, a war criminal the whole time? In all of them?
He betrayed Captain America to the Nazis.
What?
Yeah, Wolverine is canon, and he's made this a point. It was after he got his memories back, and he was like, fuck, I was an asshole. And it's canon that Wolverine, before he lost his memories, was a piece of shit.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
He was he's had a few team ups with Captain America, but in the World War II, because again, obviously people are going to want to tell that story. But the one, I think this is like the definitive, this is the last team up before Captain America got like in the ice, and they were on like a mission together, and they had like a thing. Okay, Wolverine, you go around here, I'll take it and flank them. Wolverine got a better offer, and he's like, okay, I'll sell him out, and I'll get out of it quick. I don't want to get tortured again. I'm fine.
Wow. That is so fucking harsh.
Uh-huh.
So what was he like? That's so crazy to think about. Because like one of my favorite things was always like Wolverine and Captain America liberated the concentration camp Magneto was in. Like that's always one of my favorite little like, I don't even know if that's from a comic or if that's just headcanon, but that's something
that's from a comic.
Okay, yeah, that's always such a cool little detail. And like I remember X-Men Evolution, like, he was visiting Captain America's frozen body and like saying, we'll find a way to bring you back soon, Cap. And there's always like this deep friendship between them. And it's so weird to think about, they fucking like sold him down the river. God damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is why, again, it's really interesting when you get to that fact that this is, Wolverine is a character who's in 100% all the time guilt-ridden doing this. Like, he's almost like the ultimate Marvel hero in that respect, because the Marvel heroes nearly 100%, bar an exception, are doing it to make up for the person they used to be or a mistake they made. Captain America's really the only one who isn't that. Even Thor's like that. Like, everyone's kind of got that gimmick. It's like what Marvel is. And Wolverine's the one who's had an entire lifetime of centuries of doing that shit and being the worst possible person and only be given a chance to do better through circumstance because he lost his memories, so he had a chance to start over from scratch, and he's still kind of an ass. So
yeah, he's an ass on your side,
Mm-hmm. There's just it's really it obviously was never intentional, and that's why a lot of those, there's so many other instances of Captain America and Wolverine just being like friends, and before Wolverine's backstory was fully laid out, they kind of left it into the air of how good a guy he was he doing this, what groups, what sides were he on. But when the Origins book did come out, Marvel did make like the whole Wolverine book after that, when that miniseries was going on. The rest of it was, okay, so Wolverine's now going to go back and retrace his steps now that he knows who he was, and every single one was like, oh god, I did this, oh god, I did this, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. And it just led into kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it made him a much stronger character from that point, because you had to, I think, because the mystery was part of his appeal. The mystery, oh, Wolverine doesn't, no one knows Wolverine's real history. You can have so many stories there that the moment you commit to telling those stories, I think it's been a very good thing that they did it the way they did. If they just made him Wolverine always, I don't think it would have been as interesting from a character point, and then have him get those memories back.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and that's the problem with the Wolverine origin movie, right? Is it's just he didn't change when he lost his memories. Mm-hmm. He's the same dude, and that just it's not as interesting for that reason. Like, what's the point of him losing his memories then? It's just it's just pointless at that point, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty much one of the failings of that, and one of the failings of, I guess, taking away that like dark, scummy underbelly away from the character to make him more mainstream. Is the moment you say, oh, Wolverine has sold Captain America to the Nazis, it kind of makes him harder to sell toys about.
Which is weird because, like, I mean, they're busting up like African villages in that fucking movie. Like, there's some really shady shit. Like, his brother, Sabretooth clearly raped someone in Vietnam. Like, that just happened in the pre-credits of that movie before he killed a superior officer. Like, and Logan was protecting him. There's like a lot going on in that opening credit scene that kind of gives you like this sense of kind of a bad character, but he's just written as such like a not that guy, you know. There's really no difference, and I feel like, you know, Jackman's a good enough actor that I'd be surprised if he didn't try to, you know, really lean into and do a different performance or a different take on the character before he becomes the character he was used to playing. But at the same time, it's just, you know, like they clearly didn't let him get away with it because it's just a nothing character change. He's Wolverine at the start of the movie, he's Wolverine at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like he went back and got a chance to do that more rougher around the edges take on him in Logan when he's older, which I think is another really interesting part of the character. Is Wolverine's already an old man, but for some reason making Wolverine an older old man does seem to work really well, and I think that's interesting because he's got kind of like the sweet spot with immortality, where he's old enough he can have all these experiences, all these countless adventures, but he's not like a god. He's got a very defined, like, he is always getting older, it's just slow. And I think that works really well for telling those stories, because you can get to the point where he is starting to lose stuff. He's not trying to take anyone's shit anymore because his new life has now started to go just as bad as his old life. So it's making things even worse because he's just repeating things. The whole thing in the comic, where I've got some big problems with the Old Man Logan comic, but I do think it's a really good moment where the reveal of that book for why Wolverine just quit and gave up is because Mysterio tricked him into killing all the X-Men.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, like there's just like the plot of that book is, oh, okay, so the supervillains got together and figured out there's like 50 of them to every one hero, so they decided to just team up and launch one coordinated strike one day, and the strike against the X-Men was Mysterio being sent to them because they never dealt with that guy before, because he's not psychically attacking them, it's illusions and like gas and like techniques, and he just makes Wolverine think it's the supervillains attacking the X-Men mansion. So Wolverine has this giant final battle where he fights all these villains at once and he just barely manages to win, but just as he's about to kill like the last villain, it turns out it's like Cyclops, and then he turns around and then everyone is already dead and he just butchered the X-Men.
Jesus. I need to read Old Man Logan at some point.
It's got its moments. It really does. It's also got really fucked up, not so good moments because it's Mark Millar, but I think it is worth a read at least, because hey, symbiote T-Rex.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, so like I guess, you know, I was really shaky on this, and I was like, he just doesn't want to think of another character, but it's fine. We'll figure out a way to make it work. But like, really, the more I figure out about Logan, I'm really seeing your argument here. Yeah, Logan has a lot going for him as kind of a horror-esque character, and respect. I'll concede my wrongness.
Yay, I'll take it. You call me a dork, and now he's got respect. That's character development there, folks.
Yeah, there we go. Respect. Not respect, respect. RESPC. All right. Well, I guess let's go ahead and go on to recommendations. I've obviously got less content to be able to recommend, so I'm going to go with the easy ones. I'm going to recommend 2 out of the 3 Wolverine trilogy movies, The Wolverine and Old Man, and just Logan. And I'm also going to recommend Savage Avengers because it's kind of fun. So that's my recommendation for Wolverine reading and watching.
For me, I'm going to go ahead and recommend probably a few, just because if you want the best Wolverine horror stories, 2 off the back of my head. So, first of all, Weapon X, really, really solid. I think it's just like 3 issues. It's an older comic, but you can still read it like it's written really well for the time, so it doesn't feel like it's got that age. I know some people have some trouble getting into like the 70s and 80s kind of comics with how they're written, but this has got that Dark Knight Returns vibe where you can still read it today and it works perfectly fine. That's the best terms of Wolverine just as a silent monster. Very Frankenstein vibes, very Jason Voorhees, where things go bad for these scientists who start to play God and unleash something that they don't know how to control, and Wolverine just eviscerates them all without saying a single word the entire comic. It's very fucked up, especially what they do to him. When they're experimenting on him, there are like some stunning art visuals in that of just like how fucked up they dissected this guy and inserted metal into his body. When you think about that, it's just like, oh Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like the movie where they just put him in a bath. So there's that, and then Wolverine Goes to Hell by Jason Aaron is where Wolverine's soul gets taken to hell, and he meets the devil, and then he has to face every single person he's ever killed, and it's fucking awesome.
Nice.
And then if you want to just go to more classic Wolverine stories, another Jason Aaron book is Wolverine and the X-Men, where Wolverine starts up the Jean Grey School for Mutants, and he tries to do the mutant things himself as the head teacher and tries to redeem himself. It's really wholesome. It's that side of Wolverine where he's really good with kids. He's really good as like the teacher figure, and probably Wolverine versus Spider-Man, because that's a kind of really good Spider-Man story. It's a really good Wolverine story, and any story with those 2 I think have a really good dynamic. So yeah, those would be my picks.
Okay, cool. All right, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Next week we'll talk about fuck it, we'll talk about Cthulhu.
Ooh, snap.
Yeah, should be interesting. All right, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm Scythe Part 2.
And I'm Gore for Fun.
And we are your ghouly gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ha 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 ha!